This is Hank's most panicked moment in Breaking Bad. He never imagined that the Heisenberg he had been hunting all along would turn out to be his own brother-in-law, Walter. Hank couldn't believe it was true, so he hurried home to get Gail's files from before. After carefully comparing, Hank found that the notes in the two books were written by the same person. The thing Hank feared most had come true. He called in sick and took a few days off, specifically telling Marie not to inform Skyler about this. Marie told Hank to rest well at home and not to think about work. However, the next second, Hank's subordinate delivered all the information about the Heisenberg case. Eager to solve the case, Hank quickly closed the garage door and started examining the materials. He laid out all the files and watched the video of Walter and Jesse stealing methylamine from the chemical plant in the south of the city. Watching the movements of one of the people in the video, Hank felt a sense of familiarity. It was clear that Walter was the final piece of this huge puzzle. Meanwhile, Walter was discussing with his wife how to launder the money quickly. Little did he know that Hank had already begun secretly investigating him. At this moment, they were wearing light-colored clothes, symbolizing their transition from darkness to light. But just then, Lydia came to find Walter. Due to Walter's retirement, the purity of Lydia's exported contraband had plummeted. She begged Walter to come back and guide them for a week, but Walter flatly refused. Skyler, observant as ever, noticed that Lydia's car was rented. Generally, no one would spend money to wash a rented car, so she asked Walter what was going on. Walter no longer concealed the truth and told her everything. Next, Skyler was full of authority. She issued a stern warning and drove Lydia away.
Get out of here. Now. Excuse me? Never come back here. Do you understand me?
At the same time, Jesse, having received $5 million, was in a state of confusion, because when Jesse was ready to quit and asked Walter for money, Walter's harsh words drove him away.
Why do you want this money?
Because it's mine? It's my cut?
But isn't it filthy blood money? I mean, you're so pure, you have such emotional depth. No, you shouldn't touch that dirty money. I'll save you from that, Jesse.
Unexpectedly, those words had a profound impact on Jesse. Feeling hopeless, Jesse took the $5 million and found Saul. He asked Saul to give $5 million to the parents of the innocent boy they killed while stealing the methylamine, and the remaining $5 million to Mike's granddaughter Kaylee. Saul, seeing Jesse's unusual behavior, said that doing so would only complicate matters. Feeling disappointed that Saul wouldn't follow his request, Jesse got up to leave with the money. Saul realized Jesse was not in a good state, so he hurriedly agreed to Jesse's request. After Jesse left, Saul immediately contacted Walter and informed him of Jesse's unusual behavior. Walter was receiving N4 at the hospital at that moment, indicating his health was not in good condition. After leaving the hospital, Walter went straight to Jesse's house with 2 bags of money. He advised Jesse to forget the past and focus on the life ahead. Walter asked Jesse why he wanted to give money to Mike's granddaughter. Jesse thought Mike had been killed by Walter, but Walter denied it and spoke convincingly. The biggest difference between Walter and Jesse now was that Walter wouldn't let past events affect his future. Back home, the family of 3 finally had a reunion dinner like they used to. During dinner, Walter suddenly felt unwell and hurried to the bathroom to vomit. It seemed that his lung cancer symptoms had recurred. He knelt by the toilet to catch his breath, and at that moment, he noticed that the copy of Leaves of Grass with Gail's handwriting was missing from the top of the toilet, but he remembered clearly that Leaves of Grass was on the toilet. Walter searched for a long time but couldn't find it. He asked Skyler if she had seen the book, but she didn't even know that such a book existed in their house. After getting into bed, Walter ponders for a moment and then asks Skyler about Hank. Ironically, Hank had specifically told Marie not to tell Skyler about his matters. However, when Walter asked Skyler about Hank, she knew all about it. She said Hank seemed to have a stomach flu and hadn't been to work for a week. Hearing this, Walter fell into deep thought. After Skyler fell asleep, Walter quietly slipped out. He searched around in the car, and eventually, his worst fears were confirmed. Remember this kind of tracker? It was the same method Hank had used to investigate Gus before. Walter realized that Hank knew things he shouldn't know, so the next day he went to confront him. Seeing Walter, Hank hurriedly stuffed the investigative files into a box. Facing Walter, Hank appeared somewhat flustered. After a few awkward pleasantries, neither of them broke the ice, and their conversation was markedly less relaxed than before. Seeing that Hank wasn't going to bring up the matter, Walter exchanged a few more greetings and was about to leave, but in the end, Walter couldn't help but question Hank.
You're gonna laugh, but I have to ask you about this. Believe it or not, I found this on my car. I mean, it looks just like the GPS tracker that we used on Gus Fring, doesn't it? Back when we were tracking him, just the two of us. You wouldn't know anything about this, would you, Hank?
Realizing his tricks were exposed, Hank stopped pretending. He picked up the remote and closed the garage door.
Hank, it was you. All along, it was you! You drove into traffic to keep me from that laundry. Calm down. All I got. Tell me Marie was in the hospital. That wasn't Pinkman. You had my cell number. You killed 10 witnesses to save your You bombed a nursing home. Heisenberg. Hank, my cancer is back. Good. Rot, you son of a... I want to beat this thing. I do. I'm back on chemo and I am fighting like hell. You were able to convince anyone that I was capable of doing these things. You and I both know I would never see the inside of a jail cell. What's the point? Skyler, bring the kids here. And then we'll talk. That is not going to happen. I don't even know who I'm talking to. If you don't know who I am, then...
Some of Walter's words at the end also meant he had no choice but to declare war on Hank. Walter, who had intended to retire, was once again played by fate. Such is the unpredictability of life. How would you react if you saw that much money in person?
I gotta do it, man. Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
QB told Huel to get up and get to work, but Huel was unresponsive. He wanted to experience lying on $80 million before working.
Ah, screw it.
Just moments ago, Hank discovered that Walter is Heisenberg, so that Hank doesn't catch the evidence. Saul advises Walter to move the stolen money as quickly as possible. So, Saul's two subordinates received the important task of transferring $80 million in cash. This marked the official beginning of the showdown between Walter and Hank. Right after leaving Hank's house, Walter hurriedly tried to contact his wife, but Skyler's phone was constantly busy. Looking back, it turned out Hank had already contacted Skyler. In a panic, Walter drifted and sped all the way to the car wash, but he was still a step behind Hank. At that moment, Hank was secretly meeting with Skyler. He expressed sympathy for Skyler's situation and understood why she had suddenly walked into the pool back then. He urged Skyler to recall Walter's misdeeds carefully and took out a tape recorder to record evidence. Clearly, Skyler was not mentally prepared at that moment. She knew that if Walter got arrested, she couldn't escape either. Facing Hank's urgent questioning, the shrewd Skyler saw through Hank's anger towards Walter and his determination to catch him by any means necessary. Skyler also realized that Hank didn't have the evidence to arrest Walter yet, so she chose to stand by Walter's side.
Am I under arrest? Am I under arrest? Hank, are you arresting me? Am I under arrest?
As soon as Skyler came out, she immediately contacted Walter. Saul, worried that Hank might be tapping Skyler's phone, quickly told Walter to take out the phone battery. Walter was angry at Skyler for going to see Hank without his permission. Saul subtly suggested if Walter could send Hank to the same place where Mike went. At first, Walter didn't get it, but when he did, he cursed Saul out. Even though Walter was a bad guy, he still had his limits. Family was always the most important, and he would never harm Hank. Meanwhile, Saul's two subordinates had successfully brought the $80 million out of the warehouse. Walter carefully counted the money and found that not a cent was missing. Then he casually loaded a bag of notes for their hard work. After arranging everything, Walter drove alone to a remote area. He was going to bury all the money. At the same time, Skyler, unable to reach Walter, was extremely anxious. She hurriedly contacted Saul, but Saul, not trusting Skyler, did not reveal Walter's whereabouts to her. Just then, Marie and Hank came in to confront her. Faced with Marie's questioning, Skyler was speechless. It was only then that Marie realized she had known about Walter's actions since her sister lied about his gambling.
I am so sorry. You won't talk. You won't talk to Hank because you think that Walt is going to get away with this.
Skyler, slapped by Marie, did not retaliate, but what she never expected was that Marie would want to take her daughter away. Seeing Skyler trying to stop her, Marie called Hank over to help take the child. If Skyler really called the police, who knows who would end up worse off. Fortunately, Hank was rational enough to angrily reprimand Marie and return the child to Skyler. The sisters were now completely estranged. We're curious about their childhoods and what kind of parents raised such different children. Although the show doesn't delve into this, from the limited plot, we can see that the sisters don't seem to have much in common. Walter is still digging, and he has to do it himself. He worked from morning till night, using all his strength to bury the 8 barrels of cash. To remember the burial location, the clever Walter bought a GPS tracker and memorized the coordinates. In the next scene, a lottery ticket with precise coordinates was pinned to Walter's refrigerator. This lottery ticket serves as a plot device for later. Seeing Walter covered in dust, Skyler guessed that he had moved the money. Before Skyler could explain her meeting with Hank, the exhausted Walter collapsed to the ground. A few hours later, Walter slowly regained consciousness, and Skyler guessed that his cancer had returned. Walter was ready to turn himself in and asked his wife to promise to leave the money for their children, but Skyler pointed out that from Hank's behavior, it was clear he didn't have enough evidence to prove their crimes. Even if Walter turned himself in, they couldn't keep the $80 million, so Skyler suggested that Walter lie low for now. As Skyler predicted, when Marie urged Hank to arrest Walter, Hank admitted he didn't have solid evidence and couldn't involve his colleagues. Remember Hank's boss George? George was fired simply for being too close to Gus. The relationship between Hank and Walter was much closer. If Hank reported Walter, he could lose his job and possibly face repercussions. If Hank didn't go public, he could be seen as covering up. If someone else uncovered Walter's crimes, Hank's career would be over. Hank was truly in a difficult position. To avoid suspicion, Hank went to work as usual, putting Walter's case on hold for now. Hank planned to proactively contact his boss, requesting to follow up on other cases, indicating that he was temporarily giving up the investigation of Walter. However, when Hank heard some news, he saw a new glimmer of hope for arresting Walter, because in the past few days, Jesse hadn't been idle. He couldn't accept the $5 million in dirty money, haunted by the thought of the innocent boy they accidentally killed. Jesse's conscience tormented him. To ease his guilt, Jesse dumped all the money into people's yards in the middle of the night, scattering it everywhere. Finally, Jesse, looking like a madman, lay dazed on a carousel in the park and ended up being taken to the police station. When Hank heard the news, he rushed over, hoping to get some useful information from Jesse. Do you think a mentally shattered Jesse would cooperate with Hank?